again, I'll just clarify for a second. Helmet Force was actually more Shibir Force under the guise of Chhatro League. Hundreds of students were shot. I was shot. Many of people with me were severely injured. I was injured.
They were an easy target on 18th of July and subsequent because
I think the government made everybody a target. Sometimes I do get the brunt of her frustrations and anger.
Empathy and leadership, speaking of that, I think certainly you do have that. You do show that you care for your people. In addition to that, I think one thing that I personally like about you is your composure and the clarity with which you make your argument. And I guess, and I would imagine having a barrister for a wife really helps in that case. Your wife is not only a highly respected lawyer, but she's also one of the wonderful public speakers. How influential is she in your political decisions, or maybe in your political journey, and the way you approach public life? Because, like you said, you have marks in your body, you have marks in your mind. That does not only affect you, it affects your entire family. So you're in it not alone. You're in it with your family.
True. Right. So first and foremost, one thing I would sort of change the wording of your question. Sort of not arguments, but discussions. I don't debate. I don't argue. I like to discuss. There's a difference. As far as sort of clarity of speech and how I sort of discuss things, or how I present reasons and whatnot, is not so much helped by my beloved wife, but rather I think we connected because that's the way I express myself. She has been, her support has been paramount in my journey, in many, many ways. First and foremost, obviously, she gives me courage. That's first and foremost the biggest support, because I've taken many, many big risks over the last 13 years in politics. People from my socioeconomic background or social life and whatnot don't do what I do. They just don't. They don't get baton charged by the police. They don't get picked up by RAB DGFI. They don't get, goom or so on and so forth, These things don't happen
get to the street.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, exactly. So that's not what they do. And I had, sort of the courage to do this is not just within myself. This is, as you said, it's a family thing. So my wife was always there, is always there to support me in that. As far as political decision making is concerned, also, I am very, very fortunate to have her as my partner in life, because we do discuss many things. Sometimes I do get the brunt of her frustrations and anger for not, sort of discussing certain things. This has happened in the past as well, where crucial things that happened, and sort of I have faced extreme persecution, and that those decisions were not, she was unaware of those decisions. Those things have happened as well in the past, because in politics, many things happen that you don't have control over. But in most of the time, she's one of the people I trust the most for, sort of honest and actually wise opinions. So it's not just honest opinion, but also wise opinion, many things that, sort of you can count on. And so most times I discuss things with her. And I have great insight into the world of law and, how the legal world works in Bangladesh as well, because of the honest discussions she has with me. So we are in many ways, if you would, the phrase partners in crime in every way.
I hope that continues, and that also helps you become a better politician over time. Now, we're having this conversation because there's an upcoming election in a few months. And all this is because of the July Revolution last year, where the private university students played a pivotal role. And that wasn't the only time that they took to the street. Back in 2018, during the road safety movement, they were extremely active, to a point that it angered the former regime that they unleashed their, let's say, paramilitia, the Helmet Force. So I have two questions around this private university students' engagement into the political discourse. One is they're often criticized for being detached from local culture and local context. However, in the times of need, especially in 2018 and 2024, they have shown remarkable courage and civic engagement. How do you see the engagement of private university students in the political discourse of Bangladesh? That's one. And the second is, since you regularly meet and teach them, during both these crucial times in 2018 and 2024, when you were the opposing voice, did these two hats of yours, a university lecturer and an opposing force, did they merge, or did you try to keep them separate for the safety of your students?
Now, the second question is much more complicated than the first, but I will try to answer both as best I can. First and foremost, private university students, the stigma related to them being detached and whatnot, that was never true. It was just in fashion to speak of them as that. That's just the simple, plain and simple case. Because, there has been a time, or even now maybe it continues, that public university students have a tag for private university students, farmer murgi. These sorts of tagging, that happens because, a lot of the people in public universities feel that the private university students are more privileged. And so there is a bit of anger, frustration, what you will, related to that. So this is normal in countries like ours. Private universities have always been connected, as in the student bases have always been connected with civic engagement with the society around them. So that's not anything new. 2018 or even before that, the VAT Birodhi Andolon against VAT on private universities, even the first quota movement, where private university students really had no vested interest, yet they came out on the streets. And they were a very loud voice for the, anti-quota movement initially, back in 2017, 2018. And again, the road safety movement, as you mentioned, like in July, when 2024 July, 2018, on the 18th of July, there was a huge procession, like tens of thousands of students. I was at the front of that procession. From North-South University to Brack University, in between, hundreds of students were shot. I was shot. Many of people with me were severely injured. I was injured, sort of blood-laden and whatnot. So these things happen, and these things have happened a lot. But private university students are never going to get engaged like public university students in political activism or in that kind of political activism. Because, you see, public universities have been used, and you referred to helmet force. There's a bit of a, again, I'll just clarify for a second. Helmet force was actually more Shibir force under the guise of Chhatra League. Chhatra League were goons. That's just what they were. They were a paramilitary force for Hasina. But the worst part of Chhatra League, the helmet Baini, was actually Jamaat Shibir, as in, Chhatra Shibir, the student wing of Jamaat, masquerading as Chhatra League. So that's something important to remember. I mean, it's not going to be important for our conversation today, but this has to come out in public discourse properly. This is a very important point. Anyway, so these goons, these political parties, Sheikh Hasina has uses public university students for that sort of politics. Shibir uses public university students for that sort of politics. Other parties might try. Private universities, that's never going to happen. Private universities, they're more focused on education. The parents actually have to, fork out a lot of money for that education. So the parents are not going to allow their sons and daughters to waste their time and ruin their lives in violence or other sorts of things. Public university is not the same. It's all subsidized by the government. So we've got to bring in changes to these systems as well to do that. So public university students it's part of it's erroneous thinking that public university students are only politically engaged. No, they're engaged in civic, there's civic engagement, there's social engagement, but a large part of the political activism that they're engaged in is not positive political activism. It's really, as perpetrators of political violence. Private university students, they'll do all the rest, but never be part of perpetrators of political violence because, again, their social sphere doesn't allow them to. So that's the difference between the two.
Is that why they were an easy target on 18th of July and subsequent? Because
I think the government made everybody a target.
Okay.
The government made everybody a target. If you will, after July, because we were, at the forefront in July and so on and so forth, right? And even after that, so many thousands of people very badly injured in hospitals and so on and so forth. So whenever we went to visit the hospitals, it was clear to us that most of the people who are injured were not even students. They were mostly youth, but they were youth that were related to so some form of labor or other. They're not they're not student activists. So just to say that only students were targeted. Now Hasina's regime back in July, August targeted everybody who was against them. And so in that regard, everybody suffered. Now, the second question you asked, my roles in the two. I've always tried to, maintain a balance and keep the two separate. Never in my classroom do I preach my political ideologies. So rarely will you see a frontline political activist, a youth political activist from my party who was my student. My students, I hope and I believe that they love me a lot and so on and so forth. But, I don't connect the two. Even, like back in 2018, when there was, the road safety movement, I stood with the students. When I stood with the students, none of my, political workers or activists from my party were with me. In July 18, like from July 4th, my party officially supported the movement. 2024, last year we're talking about. From July 4th, we were one of the first parties, if not the first party, that vocally supported the movement. July 15th, 16th, 17th, we were attacked. I was injured twice on the 16th and 17th when I was, marching with my party activists in the greater Motijil and whatnot area, the political hotbed. Those places. But on the 18th, when I came and joined, students of the private universities, my political activists were not with me. I was just with the students. It was the students who put me in front. Like tens of thousands of people marching behind me, I was in front, but it was the students who put me in front, not my political party. And so my identity there was that of a teacher. So I've always tried to keep these two separate. Part of the reason is Hasina had put a fear in everybody that even if you ask for something, make sure it's not politicized. Even though the demand itself is political, make sure it's not politicized. So political personalities have to be aside. Hasina had put the fear of God in people related to that. And also, given that Hasina attacked anything that was politicized, I also actively tried to distance my political identity when I was with students. So that, okay, Bobby Hajjaj, the teacher is here. No political party is here. So you can't hit these people because they're part of Bobby Hajjaj's political party. You get the drift. So I try to keep them separate as well. But primarily, it's the students who also, requested, desired, or wanted this separation. So that's how those things worked.
Transitioning from last year to present times, in October, it was announced that you'd be contesting for Dhaka 13 as part of the BNP-led alliance, right? And you've actively been campaigning. How has the response been so far from the voters and also from the BNP loyalists? Because you have to win their hearts too, I guess.
Fair enough. First and foremost, it was the coalition that declared. So as part of the coalition, it's my duty to fulfill the call, if you will. And so I started, it's been just a couple of weeks that I actually started campaigning so mid-October, that we started campaigning in Dhaka 13. And I'm blessed that the reaction has been so favorable. First and foremost, you talked about, the BNP loyalists. They accepted me with open arms because, again, we've been long-time partners. That has not been the case everywhere. So, that has been somewhat unfortunate. But in my case, it has been that we've been long-time partners. And that appreciation is very much, embedded in the hearts and minds of at least the BNP activists in Dhaka 13, in Greater Dhaka 13 area. So they've been very helpful. They are, intimately part of the campaign as they are meant to be. And other parties in the coalition as well. the Jugopath coalition that we have. Other parties in the coalition like the Khilafat Majlis Bangladesh, Gon Adhikar Porishod and others have all of their activist bases in Dhaka 13 have come out in full support. So I've been blessed in that regard. As far as the voters are concerned, every place I've touched physically, I've received a lot of love from the voters, from the people. And the surveys we've conducted show that people are accepting me So I am very, very happy. I mean, the only word I have really for this is blessed.
I'm glad that's the way it is. When you talk to the voters and different stakeholders, and also the survey that you did, what are the 3 pressing issues in your constituency?
There are many issues, first and foremost, obviously. And this is not just about my constituency. This is about all of Bangladesh. But specifically in Dhaka 13, the top 3 pressing issues are crime, crime, and crime. I mean, it really is that bad. I mean, in the surveys, when I'm talking to people, like I ask them for more problems, and it's not that they don't have more problems. Infrastructure is a great problem. Lack of utility service is a great problem. Education, work, so as in sort of employment. All of these are big problems. Healthcare, support, big problems. But still, everybody, I mean, like crime is up here. The second problem is down here. It's that bad. So we are doing everything we can to come up with the best solutions. And we've already made, sort of the first 100-day promises and, pre-election promises. And hopefully, I can't promise, but I am hopeful that by December, way before the election, I mean, at least 40, 50 days before the election, by December, we'll be able to show both our voters and the rest of the nation that we can bring positive change in even a crime-ridden area like Dhaka 13 without having gone into parliament.
I look forward to that. But then, are you in a position at this point in time to kind of give us an outline that how would you deal with the challenge? Because crime is very interrelated with so many other variables. You have to look at it from a systematic solution. There is unemployment, there could be local trade syndicate business, there could be other factors in play. Would you like to share 1 or 2 ideas of how
certainly. I mean, as you said, crime is a systemic problem. It's not a one-off thing that you take 2 criminals off the street and everything changes. Obviously, you do have to have measures to take criminals off the street as well. It's a systemic problem. So you got to have all sorts of systemic solutions. So our first, so we have a 100-day program, we have a 6-month program and a 1-year program, which we are, promulgating as we speak. Sort of as our campaign promises. And some of these are, first and foremost, we're getting more community engagement. So we're going door to door. We're going, housing society to housing society, school to school, college to college. We're doing this right now as we speak. And we're getting these communities, sort of entwined. We're getting all of them together. And we're getting community volunteers. We're raising community funds. And with that, we are, sort of marking hotspots. We are putting CCTV camera on hotspots. We are putting, sort of additional lighting on hotspots. We are getting, sort of, 24/7 immediate response apps. These apps are going to be connected to our, sort of community volunteer teams. So community volunteer teams will know what's going on, where, anything that comes up and so on and so forth. So these apps we are going to publicize, in a grand scale in that location, that area. We're going to have the police stations, the thanas, incorporated into this program as well. So we are speaking to the DC North, Dhaka DMP police and so on and so forth to get these started. So all of these we are doing pre-election. What we want to do is show that, we can make changes. So if we get the responsibility for governance, as in, get into parliament, then imagine how much more we can do. And in that regard, we have developed our 100-day promise and the 6-month and 1-year promises.
No, I like the 2 sides of it. One is definitely the local ownership that you're trying to get by already involving the community volunteers, the housing societies, and other stakeholders. That's definitely that's something that is needed. And the other one is definitely looking at it from multiple angles of how you would like to solve that problem. Taking that as a premise, we all know that politics. And I'm sure you're not only doing politics to win the next election. It's not only for 5 years. It's forever. Or maybe even after your time. What legacy does Bobby Hajjaj want to leave behind after doing politics for, let's say, 30, 40 years? What do you want people to remember you by? It's probably way too early, but then it's good to have a goal or a legacy in mind that you strive for.
Certainly. I've always been a dreamer, always. And so I like to dream big. I mean, I'm realistic as in, but I am a romantic, I'm a dreamer, I dream big. And it's always been the case. So, I mean, and politics is not a 5-year thing. It's not a one election thing. I mean, even the most successful politician, if he has a tenure of political, lifespan of 40 years, he'll win what? 2, 3 elections, 4 elections maybe? At maximum, that's 20 years in parliament, 20 years outside. So you're not going to win every election. It doesn't matter how good you are. The people's minds might change. And so being in parliament is important. Being part of, government is important, if you can form government. But that's not be all and end all of political life. Political life is about service. My dream, so there's a medium-term dream and there's a long-term dream. And obviously I'm very greedy in that regard. I mean, greedy in the sense that, I want to be remembered.
You want to achieve more.
Yeah. I mean, I'm an academic. I grew up, reading history, political science, and so on and so forth. I mean, I'm almost 52 years old. I have, 49 years of reading the lives of so and so and so and so and so and so. So yeah, I am very greedy as in I would love to be remembered when I'm not here anymore. I'd love to be remembered. But why would I love to be remembered? So the legacy that I would love to leave behind if I can, so everything I do, in pursuit of this, is leaving behind an accountable, democratic Bangladesh. This is the one I'm pursuing. This is my dream, an accountable, democratic Bangladesh. This is long term. So everybody's empowered. Everybody does what they believe is right and what they want. And what they want all cumulatively grows the country, improves the country. In the medium term, my dream is we have, in Bangladesh, we have a demographic dividend right now. I mean, the fattest part of our, if you will, demographic spread is the youth. And it's never going to be this big anymore. 30, 40 years next 30 years, solid, we have to make the next few jumps, socioeconomically, economically, so on and so forth for this country. So my medium-term dream is to ensure that demographic dividend, we actually, take full advantage of it. And this demographic dividend doesn't turn into a demographic curse. This is my medium-term dream. Long-term dream is establish forever, accountable democracy in Bangladesh.
In pursuit of that accountable democratic Bangladesh, say the BNP-led alliance gets to form the next government, and you get to play a very crucial part in it. I know you talked about your midterm plans, your long-term plans, but what should be the top of your agenda immediately after election?
I think what the government's agenda should be, no matter who gets, who wins the election and forms government, the primary agenda, first on the agenda, many things on the agenda, first and most important would be education. Because think about this, I mean, even in Dhaka 13, we were talking about crime, right? The people who are perpetrating these crimes, had they had access to a better future, crime doesn't pay too much. They wouldn't. It's high risk, low returns. Who wants to do that? So if they had access to a better future, they wouldn't be part of these criminal syndicates. But they don't. Why? Education. There's no dearth of jobs and employment opportunities the world around. Why don't our kids get all of those, are able to use all of those opportunities? Education. So if you want to build this country, and remember, I mean, my midterm goal is demographic dividend, sorry. And if you want to, actually collect that dividend, you need education. So education would be, you said one agenda, right? So the first one, the most important one would be education. There are many other things we got to look at. Many other things we got to fix, because if you're not in good health, how do you study? So health sector, so many things are important. But still, my first focus would be education.
You've been quite busy with the campaigning, and if elected, you'd get even busier. And we've heard it many times that politics can eat up your family life, or let's say family time. I know for a fact that you're a family man. How are your children coping up with the new pace of life? Do they realize that they probably wouldn't get as much quality time with their dad as they used to enjoy, let's say, pre-nomination?
This is one slight mistake a lot of people make. You see, my children know that my time is very limited. Over the last many years, I've been trying to build my party. So I've been campaigning nonstop, and most of this campaigning has been outside of the city. So my children know that most of the time I'm not even in the house, as in not even in the city. Now that I'm campaigning for a particular area which is in Dhaka, I am actually in Dhaka all the time. So you might argue they get to see a bit more of me now than they used to. But obviously, what I try to do is see my kids at least once every day. And that's why, I have a very early morning routine. Most political activists, they don't do early mornings. And again, it's not their fault. They can't. People come to them till very late at night. So, you get phone calls. I do. Phone calls at 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m., 3 a.m. People are still physically hanging out with you till 1:30 a.m. So you can't get to bed very early. And if you get to bed at 3 a.m., there's no way you can be healthy and wake up at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Right? I try to, finish my evenings early by midnight. Unless there's some sort of emergency, my work day doesn't extend after midnight. Because I wake up very early in the morning and I sit and have breakfast with my daughters before they go to school. So it doesn't matter if I haven't seen them all day, I have seen them in the morning. We've had even a brief chat like, oh, how was school yesterday? Was this exam good? How are friends doing? So on and so forth. Even a brief chat, but we have in the morning. So I try to do that every morning so that we don't get disconnected. My schedule, I don't know, I've never lived a public life in the sense that I've never been in parliament or, had those responsibilities. So I don't know if my schedule is going to change a whole lot. My schedule is going to change, but my hours going to change in the sense. I'm busy with 5 types of work now. I might be busy with different types of work once that happens. Hopefully, if, God willing, if that happens. But I don't imagine the hours are going to be a whole lot different. Because I'm already, working 18 hours a day now. How much longer can a person work? So I don't think the hour is going to be changing much.
Speaking of children, from one father to another father, what change would you like to bring about in Bangladesh so that it's a safer place for children when they're adults?
Right. Well, the first thing I dream of, I want to do, is a Bangladesh where my children don't want to leave. Because, honestly speaking, this is not just about my children. I'm a teacher at an university, at a good one. And, whenever I ask in class, so like suppose there's a classroom of 40 students and how many of you want to go abroad to work on? 30 hands will raise. Most people just don't want to stay here. They want to go abroad. And I don't blame them. Things are not very good here. Employment opportunities, quality of life. You want to go to a hospital. You don't know if the hospital is going to treat you right. Do you know anybody who can afford it and gets healthcare in this country? No. You go to Singapore, you go to Thailand, you go to Malaysia, you go to, if you can't afford those places, you go to India. You still don't go to Bangladesh. Why? So these are things we need to change. We need to make this country such that other people want to come back here. People from India, Nepal would want to migrate here. People from Thailand would want to come to Bangladesh as opposed to Bangladesh is going to Thailand. That's what I dream of. And for that, we need all sorts of infrastructure development. We need the healthcare to be good. We need the road and thoroughfares to be good, more efficient. We need the school system to be good. We need, social services to be good. We need, law enforcement to be more accountable. So there are a whole lot of changes we need to make, and we have to start making all of them at the same time. A lot of people say that small changes have big impact, and yet when we are actually working, we forget that small changes can make big impact. So the small changes we make today, like if we come into government, in 2026 February, we'll start with these sorts of changes. We'll start with empowering institutions, making institutions more accountable, but also democratic, performance-based. So the old, colonial system of government institutions, we don't want them to exist anymore. We want to move into the new democratic era, and that's what we are promising the people.
Does that bother you that even after 50 years of independence, we're still fighting for the basics, like a good health care system or Safety. Does that bother you that it's taking this long for us? Or do you think it is like what it is, a gradual system that takes decades for developing nations to evolve over time?
The answer is a lot more complicated, but yes, I am bothered. I am irked, I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated with where we are today. But also I have a good understanding of what has led to this situation. And with that in mind, I think we persevere to introduce changes, to ensure that the next 50 years are not going to be like the last 50 years.
Or maybe fast track a little bit.
No, I mean,
10,
overall, the
15
next 50 years. In 5 years, we want to see tremendous changes. In 10 years, we want to see a completely changed Bangladesh. Hence, I say that the next 50 years are not going to be the last 50. And that's what we strive to do. And we need the people's support, the people's votes. So again, it's all up to the people.
We've talked about politics, policies, and your personal journey. Now I'd like to switch gears for a bit.
Sure.
So the next segment is a rapid fire segment. Short questions, give your first instinct. Shall we start it?
Sure.
If you had to rate the performance of the interim government on a scale of 1 to 10, what score would you give and why?
10 being highest?
10 being highest.
Between 1 and 2.
And why is that?
Because they haven't, first and foremost, they haven't really promised anything from the very beginning, and then they didn't deliver anything from the very beginning. So an interim government, their job is to give an election. I mean, we fought against authoritarianism. We fought against Hasina's move to not give people their rights to vote. And so if an interim government comes in, the primary duty is to give people back that right to vote. That the interim government has failed to do in 14 months. And even now, as we speak, as we wait for the election in February, there's a lot of trouble related to those elections. There are, sort of unannounced changes in the RPO. We discussed a lot on the July Charter, and then unannounced changes in, the implementation of the Charter, so on and so forth. So they haven't kept any. First and foremost, they didn't make any promise to keep, but the assumed promise of an election, they didn't keep that either.
But what would be that one area where the interim government has done reasonably well so far?
There aren't any. Initially, they did start doing a reasonable job of cleaning up the financial sector.
And you think that it hasn't been consistent?
No, it hasn't been as consistent as it should have been.
If you win this election, what's the first promise you'll publicly commit to within the first 100 days in office?
Well, as a coalition, the government has, our coalition has promises, the 31 Act Charter and so on and so forth. Me personally, education.
What 3 words would you want voters to associate with you?
Integrity, dependability, hard work.
Well said. Instant reaction. What comes to your mind? Awami League.
Authoritarian.
July Revolution.
Big change for democracy.
The upcoming 2026 election.
Hopefully, this will be another big burst on Bangladesh's democratic journey.
And the next 5 years of Bangladesh?
Hopefully, a more democratic, beautiful Bangladesh.
I hope that happens. Any last word for your audience?
Certainly. The next election is going to be a crucial election for the future democracy of Bangladesh. So your votes matter. If you liked some party that's no longer in contention, do not stop from giving your vote. Study all the candidates that you have the ability to vote for, make an educated judgment, and then go out and practice your democratic right, give your vote. This is, again, I repeat, a very important election for the future of Bangladesh's democracy, and the power really is in your hands.
This brings us to the end of this episode of Election Conversation. Our goal is simple. We'd like to question, listen, and understand the people and policies that are going to shape up Bangladesh's politics in the coming years. I am Zunaed Rabbani. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and stay a part of the conversation.